Hello, we're here for a retake with Fran Marshall. Thank you to everyone who joined us live on Tuesday. The IG cloud decided to swallow our video on Tuesday, so we couldn't share it. So here we are. We wanted to still share with everyone a shorter version of what we talked about on Tuesday because there are so many gems and useful information. So here we are. Hi, Fran.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
I have the same mug. Do you have the same mug?
I have the same mug. Today I'm drinking iced coffee.
I'm drinking coffee.
I was feeling it. So we have a little less time because we're on Zoom. We're just gonna try to hit the big points of our conversation.
We're gonna bullet point this. This is good for me. I'm terrible at summarizing. This is wonderful.
Bullet point our Tuesday conversation.
We can do this.
We can do this. So I'm gonna go ahead with the questions and it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be fantastic.
All right. So Fran Marshall, classical music photographer. You started as a musician yourself. When did photography make an entrance and when did you realize it was here to stay?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that I would never call myself a musician. I'd be a music student. That would be the first thing I would sort of describe myself as, because I think I just couldn't say musician. It's just, I didn't get that far. But the camera was always with me, like every single step of the way. And it was very sort of natural to just have it in my bag. And it's before camera phones. So it's you know, it was always there. So I started photographing my friends all the time, you know, that I was in college with, and I started really building a portfolio from that, and that was sort of general, and it's all really about photographing what you know. So I then went to work for the National Concert Hall in the front of house section, and they'll hate me saying this, but basically you got paid really well to watch concerts and be with your friends, and it was the best job in the world. And my managers were really good to me, and they basically let me go backstage and photograph, you know, with permission, of course, the artists that were there. And I started putting those pictures up on Facebook, on social media. You know, this is about 15 years ago now, which is a bit weird to say. But yeah, that's how that happened. And then I was just working so many different jobs, you know, thinking, I can't just be a photographer, you know, that's not going to be a career. Like, what am I talking about? And I did about 4 or 5 jobs that I was working on constantly. And then I suppose the biggest thing that happened, we had this awful break-in where all my gear was stolen from our home, which was awful. But it sort of really was the catalyst for me realizing I want to stay here. You know what I mean? I want this space.
I care a lot about this.
Yeah, I care, you know. And I gave up everything else, and I just, like, metaphorically jumped off the cliff into this world, and I've never looked back. I've never regretted it. So yeah, like that was really the sort of the jumping point for me, and it was definitely there to stay. You know,
yeah,
and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, so sometimes life sends you signs, you know, to show you,
so
like,
crazy. Yeah,
you should really do this. You really love this.
Exactly. And I went into this really sort of like funnel mode of, how much money do I need to get my gear back? I need to work like a dog until I get this. And then it did happen. And, you know, things just started clicking. And when you do commit 100% to things, it just all starts coming. Yeah. I'm just a firm believer in that, you know?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
So, as you were saying, your background and life circumstances have made you a specialist in classical music photography. Do you also do photography outside the classical music world? What is the difference? And what specific skills does a classical music photographer need?
I suppose the short answer when it comes to that, which would be weird for me to say short answer, but basically commercially, no. Like, I only do classical music. I walk with my camera all the time, and especially now, and the cats are getting way too much attention, which is probably why one of them went missing for 3 days recently. But yeah, I've been over photographing the cats.
Your cat.
I found my cat. Yeah, he's very bold. He had a fight with another cat, and he ran off and got really lost, and we had no idea where he was, and then we found him behind a neighbor's shed, and we have an amazing system and community here, and everyone went looking for him, and it was beautiful. And then he came home, and now he's just being so aloof as if nothing happened. But that's a cat. So but yeah, so basically photography is really therapeutic for me, you know, like it always has been. So I like to keep that aspect in. I go for a walk with my camera a lot. It's really, I really get a lot of joy from that. But commercially, photography is only based in classical music for me, and I absolutely love it that way, and I like to keep it that way as well. So there's 3 areas that you need to work in. Well, some don't do all 3, but I really enjoy the difference between the 3 areas. So you've got your opera, you've got concerts, and you have portraits. So will I start with opera? Would that be the one to go with first?
Yes.
360 opera. So basically, you have to remember as an opera photographer that you are creating an archive. You are creating a record of a production that happened in a company on a certain stage with a director, with a set designer, with specific singers, and that is the record that they want to create. It's not about you running around and getting an amazing angle, or, you know, getting backstage and getting this great shot at the singer, with, you know what I mean, with all the audience in front of them. That's not what it's about. It's about documenting everything that is in front of you. Yeah. So my brain goes into this weird sort of mathematical space, which it just feels a lot more like technical. So it's the area where you need to know your equipment. You need to know your shutter speed. You need to know your aperture. You need to know your focal length. The type of lens you need is so important in this area. And that's always the bit that, you know, it can take you a while. So I'm not a very technically minded photographer. So that was the longest bit for me. It took me a long time to confidently market myself as an opera photographer. So you're just constantly thinking of numbers, you know, because the light keeps changing. And as well, you may not have seen the production. Now, I always try and avoid that. Like, I will move heaven and earth to see if I can get into the pre-dress. But sometimes it's just not possible. So if I can't do that, I'm ringing the director, I'm ringing the company, if I know a singer in the production, can be so helpful. And I'll be saying, what's coming? You know, where do I need to look out for? Where's the big, you know, where's the really big scenes that I need to get here? Right. At what points? Just to give me some sort of sketch. So that's really, that's the biggest obstacle there, is just not knowing what's coming, you know, and having no control. So I'm a slight control freak in general. So I really have to relinquish that and just let it happen. But you have to be so quick with your measurements, because if the light changes and that scene happens and your cameras are not set, your shot's gone.
So it's a very, that type of photography is very, very technical, because I mean, if you want, you know, I'm sure you have your artsy projects on the side, but exactly, I think it's very interesting what you're saying, because it also applies to art in general. You know, there's certain projects where it really isn't about you, or your job is to be able to be flexible. That's why you need technique, you know, that's why as a musician, we need technique as well, to be able, and for certain projects to really serve the purpose, you know, of the project.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You have to be able to serve this idea of having an archive of this certain production with certain singers. That's very
absolutely. And like, you can't, you know, I've learned opera photography from watching other opera photographers. Like, I have just sat in theaters watching them work, and that is the only way you're going to learn. But like tiny like stuff that, you know, would literally revolutionize the job you do, by the piece on top of your tripod, you know, like adjusting, like a handle, like even like I completely blew my mind recently by replacing one handle that I had on a head of a tripod. And I was like, ooh, you know, like it made this whole big difference for me, you know.
I think actually this thing now is very relevant, because we're all mortals now. We're all discovering, you know, how much of a difference, you know, changing the mic can do, putting a little ring light here and there, since we're all having to do it now, and this is what you guys on a, of course, much more legitimate level deal with, and adapt. And it's all these like little details that really add to a better product.
Yeah, like there is all of that as well. And it's sort of like you realize there's so much more you need to know. And I always feel like, the more specialist you get, more and more about less and less, and that's kind of really where you feel yourself going with this. But there's such diversity amongst what you actually end up doing, like there is just very little in common between doing a portrait and doing an opera shoot, except the fact that you're holding a camera. Well, you're not even holding a camera, it's set up on a tripod. I'd never use a tripod in a shoot, for example. So yeah, like there's that. When it comes to concerts, it is more about the angle. You do really need to move, unless it's a venue where you can't, and sometimes you might get an instruction saying you can't move. And then of course you've got a situation where you may have like the sound, they're doing the recording, the album recording during the concert. I'm like, like as my footstep, could so I'm really hoping someone's coughing, if I'm being honest, because that will be that will distract. But no, like in a concert, like in general, I'm running around in my socks, or I'm hanging off a balcony or whatever. And it is more about finding a new perspective of the production, or like of the soloist. Can I get the light moving in a different way? Again, I've no control, and you really need to know your numbers there as well, because the lighting can be tricky, because you could be in a very old church space where there's no stage lighting sometimes, or there's been many times I've turned up and it's a candle lit concert. So that's when myself and the videographer will look at each other with a permanent eye roll for 2 minutes. But it's our job to make it work. It's our job. That's why we're being hired.
You walk into a space and you're problem solving.
Exactly. You just go into this sort of click.
How many problems do I have?
Space. Yeah, and you just have to think of it really fast. And then I think it's really funny because you can go into a set, you can go into a space, and you'll look at everything and you'll analyze the whole thing. And sometimes what can happen is the concert will start and someone working in the church they just flick the whole light box and you're like, ah! And it starts and you're just there like going, oh my God. That's happened a few times, but like that's why your equipment, there are cameras that you'll use that you'll think would be fine, and then you get into it and the camera cannot actually do that photograph. So you need low light equipment all the time, and you may not always be using it, but it needs to be there. Like I hate to say it, but I'm gonna have to embrace it, but the latest iPhones are incredible. I wouldn't use one yet, but I've seen photographers using the iPhones as professional cameras now because the low light is so good. But that's the future. I think it's really getting to that sort of space, which is great because it makes it more accessible, because lugging all your equipment
totally around. I mean that's good news again for mortals.
Yeah.
For having to do things at home.
And my back.
If this had happened, yeah, exactly. Like this is what I say, like of course this is a very unfortunate situation, but imagine if we were here with no Wi-Fi, no.
Oh my God, I know.
At least not everyone, obviously, but a lot of people have access now to cheaper, decent, cameras. So
like it's keeping your brain turned on, like it's just thinking outside the box all the time. Like one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard from a photographer is by 𝗖cie𝗳𝗵𝗲, who I absolutely love. And she said that always remember that your camera is a fancy pencil. It's nothing more than that. And I've always kept that in my head. So, like I've watched my partner, Sophie, take a photograph, literally hold the camera over my head while I have, £4,000 worth of equipment in my hand. And she'll take the photo on my phone just because the angle that she's got, I'm like, like if you weigh it up, it's so depressing. It's just, the picture has to happen in your head first. And then you just need to know how to make that happen in the actual technology. So a phone shortens that amount of time.
And that's very
Yeah,
interesting what you say, because it's the same thing with musicians and technique. You know, like you have to,
really.
so that you're able to translate the ideas in your head. You know,
Yes, of
you
course.
think
Yeah.
that you have this story you want to tell, you have a certain way you want to express the music or
Mm,
line, that happens in your head first, and technique is there to allow you to express
yes.
that. It's the
Yeah.
same. So you have the image in your head and you have all these tools and techniques to be able to make that image happen.
And the biggest commonality there is not to get lost in your technique.
Yes, you see, it's the same.
It's
That's amazing.
so similar, isn't it? I never thought of it that way. Ooh, that's very good. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's true. Because if you get really bogged down in the equipment, you just lose the magic of an image completely, you know?
exactly. Right. You have to
Um,
go back to the source. What is the source? What your
exactly.
imagination?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the final one is portraits.
Yeah.
So for portraits, I stand so firmly on this, is that the most important things is connection and respect. Those two things. Respect first, connection. Um, because this is classical music, there is no, you just do not objectify people, you know. It is a very, you know, there's just no excuse. I just feel so strongly about it, that the client and the person you're photographing, I've always sort of been very strong on this, that it is an absolute honor for somebody to allow you to take their photograph, to let you into that space. I hate having my photograph taken so much. And somebody who actually not only says, yes, you can take your photograph, I'll actually commission you to do it, that is the greatest honor someone can actually give me. And I take it very seriously, and I'm very respectful of the images and the storage and all that sort of thing, and where they're kept. And you know, it's something that I'm very opinionated about as well. You know, I have an awful lot of artists who come to me who will say that they had an awful shoot with a photographer who sort of told them, you know, to act sexy or something, you know. I'm like, oh my God, like, what does that even mean? You know, what does it even mean to say that to someone? So, and it's my job to get it out of them, you know, 100%. You know, if they're tired, like they have to do so much, like, you know, they have to do so much to just work, you know, and it is my job to bring the picture out, to bring the portrait out, to bring my interpretation of them out into the image, in a persona that they're happy with. And like, I think the biggest, I've spoken to you about this before, like the biggest misconception, I think, when it comes to working in this industry, especially as a photographer, obviously, you know what I mean? There's areas where you do need to be a specialist in this, but like that you do not need to know every composer, every opera, every singer, every artist. Like I'm steeped in this industry completely, and I hear new names every day. I hear new works every day. I hear new composers every day, people I never heard of, you know.
You know, it means like we're still creating new pieces and new singers
Yeah.
coming out. Yeah.
Hopefully, and as long as I'm not getting memory issues, that's a great thing, you know. I'm like, oh, I did hear that before, who knows. But like the biggest barrier for me in all of that was the fact that I have dyslexia, and it's based in languages, so like I really struggle with languages, so that knocks on then to my pronunciation of things. So that became this massive barrier, and I became so self-conscious of mispronouncing everything that it stopped me from actually feeling like I could have a fluid conversation with the client or with an agent or with, you know, whoever was hiring me. And it was really sort of, it was ridiculous, you know. So I just had to like really just cop on and just say, you know, like I'll actually say it like in advance, you know what I mean? It sounds so stupid, but it can be a real big barrier for people, you know.
Well,
like I know.
Yeah, like want it or not, like not everyone and less, but some people in the classical music world can get a little snobby. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's good to put it out there and say like, hey, I'm not, you know, it's not that I don't know what this is, you know, and explain. And the more open you are, because we all have things, you know, we all deal with issues. So I think putting it out there and being honest actually opens up that door, you know. And what you said, my favorite quote from our live show on Tuesday was, work your empathy muscles. And that's,
that is the key. Like
you're
that
opening
is the
that
key.
door by
Yeah.
saying this, like, hey, like you might be feeling, you know, vulnerable and self-conscious or whatever. Here's what
Yeah.
I'm dealing with. Let's do this together.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's more to do with, I think, because so many people think you need this encyclopedic knowledge of the industry to work in it. It's not true. Like, I'm a photographer. My job is to take photographs. My job is to have an understanding of, I think it's more to do with having an understanding of the type of person who comes into this industry, what's demanded of them, what's needed of them. And I'm like, the clients that we get, they're warriors. Like, that's the only word I'd use. I've seen, I'm going to get this wrong now, but it's opera athletes. Oh, no, I'm pronouncing it wrong. Opera athletes. It's the mix of the two. Oh gosh, what's it called?
Opera athletes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There you go, an example. So basically, it's so I think that's the more accurate way, really, to look at these amazing artists, you know, and like what it takes to get up on stage, the vulnerability, all these things, you know, and to have. I'm always obsessed with just understanding what really makes somebody have the capacity to do that. So one of the first questions I'll always ask an artist is, okay, where do you want to be? Who do you want to be singing? And where are you going? And that's the big question, because there's no point in me photographing them where they are now, because they have that work. They know who they are right now. So this is what makes their shoot actually a conversion, you know, like a catalyst for the future. So that's what we're very passionate about. So I need to have that understanding of, okay, well, if they really want to be singing a specific composer or a specific genre, you know, there are subtle ways that we can communicate that within the shoot, you know, and but also preserving them, because it's very easy for artists to brand themselves within the industry and not in themselves, and lose themselves completely in what they believe the industry to be. And another misconception is, I know you said about snobby there earlier, and yeah, of course I agree, but I have to say the artists are not. The artists are so down to earth. Like, I really haven't come across anyone where I've ever gotten that feeling from. And because I don't think you've room, if you're getting up on a stage in front of thousands of people and you're moving through the world at the speed of lightning, as far as I'm concerned, with the travel and the moving, and, you know, obviously things are different now at the moment, but you don't have time to be that person, you know, like you're going to really understand the world, you know.
100%. It's more of like, I mean, what you're saying, which is normal, you know, like every industry has, you know, its good tendencies and bad tendencies, and we work through it, and we work through it to achieve progress and to make it better. So
I think there's a bit of a barrier, because like there's many times I've heard a situation where an artist will tell me that their parents have never felt comfortable coming to see them because they're afraid they'll say something wrong in the interval and embarrass their kid. And I just think that is horrific. And that's like really big stars saying that about their parents, you know. And
well, that's wrong, because if that's happening,
it's wrong.
That's what I always say is, you know, what's the key to making opera more accessible, or like having more people come and be curious about opera? It's really just about communication, you know, because opera was at a certain point extremely popular. And, you know, I mean, obviously, like, you know, society changes and things are more complicated, but a big topic there is communication. How do we communicate with people? And if people from outside the arts or outside the classical music world feel intimidated or feel like there's a barrier and they don't even want to approach it, then we have a problem. There's a communication issue.
And I think accessibility doesn't mean dumbing it down. Like we've spoken, we've spoken about this before, where you know, we are talking about sort of opening up and looking at other industries and looking at how other industries can shine a bit more light, you know, especially in a digital space. And because there's, you know, people keep sort of mentioning this word innovation at the moment, you know, it's really like the coin word. And it's kind of used like, why aren't they being more innovative? I'm like, well, why aren't you being more innovative? You know, that's, you know, we can all do something, you know, there's space. like I've been having like constant Zooms and meetings through this time with really amazing people. And like before lockdown, I always have a list of people that I really want to work with, really want to collaborate with. And I've gotten through that list during this time, you know, in connecting with all those people. And it's been really wonderful, you know, and like that's something I could never have done during when everything was fine, you know. And I think the industry is going to come back a lot. I don't know if it's going to come back a lot stronger, but I think, as I said to you before, I really feel that we have to remember that it wasn't easy before, you know, building a career, building an industry, building an opera performance, building a production is a huge leap of faith. And to remember like the strength we had to do that in the first place, and we can do it again. That's something that I think we really need to remember that we had, you know. People feel so deflated at the moment, and absolutely they should, you know. It's grieving for losing loved ones, and you know, and it's been really tragic. Some people have had absolutely horrific times and so much grief, and then this grief of their career, grief of these productions, grief of their jobs in all industries. And like it's very difficult, it's very weird and very hard to sort of understand what it's going to be like when we come out of this, how long it's going to be.
But at the same time, you know, I think the only way we're going to move forward and come back stronger, you know, and rebuild is going to be by accepting the things we cannot change. And, you know, we don't have control over.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a number of things we don't have control over. But this, in a way, has given us space and room and the possibility to really question all the things that everyone was complaining about before that were not working. You know, here is our chance to rebuild, avoiding those, I don't know if mistakes or things that developed a certain way because they weren't a concern before. So now we have the chance to rebuild, addressing those issues, as tragic as everything is, but we can't, that tragedy already happened in a way, and that is not in our control. What's in our control is how we're going to rebuild from here. Yeah,
absolutely. And to like, you know, you sort of have to put your hands up and say, I'm not a politician, I'm not a health expert, I'm not any of those things. So do you know what? Those people just have to be trusted. I know it's hard. But to really just trust and know that there's a lot we don't understand. Like, I am a classical music photographer. What the hell do I know about getting a country, like, you know, and we all get annoyed watching the news, and we all are like, you know, but I think within our own space, you know, you sort of have to really just try and open up a little bit and just keep thinking, you know, like we've had so many clients coming to us saying, actually, you know, this is a really good time to think about what I was presenting to the world beforehand, and now I've got loads of time to actually really consider my performance persona. So that's been great, you know. So we've been having like a lot of new business conversation, which we didn't expect during this time, you know, which has been great and really lucky.
So many young artists, you know, have taken the time to say, okay, like, I'm finally gonna build that website, you know, that I've always wanted to do and just hadn't had time. So this is a time to kind of invest. I've been learning a lot of new repertoire that I had to learn and I didn't have time to learn before, you know. So we all have something that we can invest our time on for when we're going to go back out.
Yeah, like exactly. And my biggest fear is sort of getting like blunt with my tools, you know, because I'm always sort of thinking about, oh God, if I pick up the camera, will it feel strange? Will it feel lazy? So, you know, I'm constantly trying out new technique and, you know, just shooting things that I never would have worked with before, you know, that sort of thing. Funny enough, I mentioned the cats before, which is ridiculous that I'm bringing them up again, but photographing them has been really useful because they move so fast that you have to think. So yeah, it's ridiculous. I can't believe I'm bringing them up twice in this conversation. Yeah, because it's just ridiculous.
I wanted, thing that we skipped that we talked about on Tuesday that I want to make sure we you share with us because it was super interesting was a turnaround of photographing an opera production.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit at how fast this turnaround has to be. Can you share with us a little bit of that?
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest thing to sort of remember is that every single house has a different rule. And it's really important to find out what that process is, because if you find it out halfway through, you're in the middle of a process you think they're in, it's stressful because it needs to move. So when you're engaged to do the shoot, the first question I'll ask is, do you want the full selection? Because I could do 2,000, 3,000 images in a production. And that's not fun for anyone to have to look through. It's like, you know, it's too much. So in general, when I do the second the curtain comes down on the dress rehearsal, I'm literally in overdrive. Get back to the apartment, if I'm staying away from London, if I'm working away from London, get back to wherever, do an initial selection, cut them all out, and then pray to Jesus that the Wi-Fi is fast enough to upload the images to them really quickly so they have them on their desk at 9 a.m. in the morning or whatever. If the dress rehearsal is being late, or sometimes they happen midday, sometimes they happen at 7, whatever.
Right.
So sometimes I'll be up all night just getting them through.
Because here, I know at the Met, usually there's 2 or 3 days between the final dress rehearsal and the performance. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's the day before or
Yes, exactly. And the Met has two of the most fabulous photographers, Ken Howard and Marty Sull. Oh my God, they are amazing. And they're so fast, and they're incredible photographers. But I think there's one company that I work with where they actually print a poster from the images that come from the dress rehearsal that needs to be hanging on the side of the building, and that can be within 24 hours. Yeah, before opening night. So, and of course, it's not just about getting one image ready, because you have to see the whole selection to know which is the best one. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things.
Working around the clock behind the scenes,
Exactly.
And it's something we don't necessarily not everyone is thinking about. Like, yes, of course, like there's a dress rehearsal, there's the tech, the production, all of that is go, and it's super crazy and it's making the show happen. But there's also all of this backstory going on, you processing the photos, the media department picking them, printing the posters to make sure there's a poster on opening night.
Exactly. Yeah.
So much.
And like, I'm a tiny clog in a very big machine, but if one of those clogs, it can have this really amazing, when I say amazing, effect on everything. But like, I'm always super aware that marketing teams are always, they're so stretched in those situations. No matter how big the company is, the timeline is so strong. And I have to make sure, so I will do my best to get all images to them as quickly as I can so that they have everything. They don't need to be coming back to me, because that's delaying. Even waiting the half an hour for me to get the extra image that they looked for or whatever can be slowing up a press deadline. So the timing is so much more important in that sort of space. Concerts is generally, you may have 2 days and they'll trust me to do the selection. If I know the company well enough, they'll trust me to do the selection, the edits, and send them back. So basically with opera, what will happen in general, sometimes not the same, do the shoot, cut the selection from 2,000 to 3,000 down to a couple of hundred, and get them over. They then select in the office, they get them back to me, I edit, then I get back to them, and then the final approval. It sounds very simple, but if there's any sort of disagreement around the selections,
so much has to work. I mean, it's the same. I always say this, what makes opera so magical is that so many things can go wrong.
I know. And then when it goes right, you're like,
oh, something always goes wrong on one end. It's impossible for it to this machine to go perfectly every time. But that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of artists making this crazy product happen. And you're taking that risk that, one part of the machine this time might not work.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I've always been very lucky to work with really good marketing teams. Like, I've never felt that they haven't, do you know what I mean? Like, I always just feel so like, get it to them so they can do their job,
Right.
And
that's good too from your end to know, like if you're working with a good marketing team, you don't have to worry about a lot of things as well. Are they going to credit me correctly? FYI, it's very important. Every time you share a photo, credit the photographer. Are they going to mess with my photos, putting filters, all these things that also like people don't realize, but it's respect to your work as artists, and when you as a photographer are working with a good marketing team, there's a certain number of things that you don't have to stress about. You know?
I think you brought up the crediting there. I think it is so important, and I'm a real stickler for it. And it's not just for me; it protects the industry.
Yes.
I had an amazing conversation with Mark Campbell about this, because librettists get left off the headline a lot.
Yeah.
And he made a very valid point to a company. He said, how do you expect there to be more librettists when you're not showcasing them in the title of the opera? And I was like, wow, yeah, because I've always had a huge respect for librettists. I think they're fantastic, and I think it's and I like absolutely adore Mark. I think he's amazing in what he does. But you have to credit the photographer. You know what I mean? Like, you see it all the time, and most of the time it's there. Most of the time it's really there. But it's really important because the image goes up. The image is being used to sell the article. Like, if you look at the post, even like if it's from a major newspaper, a major classical music magazine, it's the image that's making the click. So, that person who created that image needs to be credited. So that's something that I do feel very strongly about. Yes. And you need to see who's doing it, because I'm looking so I can watch and look for mentors and look for, other photographers that I really like and really follow. So totally. I always want to know, who took the picture.
And for people, outside the marketing teams, there's many accounts on Instagram, like just in general, like as a singer, as, however you're involved with opera, you need to credit the photographers because, it's mostly a show of respect for your work. So I also feel very strongly about it, and I encourage everyone to take that extra step to do it.
We should start a petition because that's what's really important right now.
You're crediting the singers, you're crediting the company, credit the photographer.
No, like I think you sort of, you can spend a lot of time chasing it up, but I will always be, but it's to protect the industry, it's to protect the art form.
So I wanted to make sure we touch on your company, because you're a photographer, but yes, you are also the co-founder of Martial Light Studio. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about that. And well, first for you to tell us about your company, but also what it is like to build your own company from scratch. And
we are a design and photography studio for classical music and opera. And that's what we do. So we work with festivals and all sorts of arts companies and individual artists themselves. And we do most of the aspects of that. So we're not a PR agency or anything like that. We provide the tools for those companies to work. So we work alongside a lot of PR companies, and we work with a lot of agents and their artists, which we love doing that as well. And then we have individual artists coming to us on their own, but we'll always do our best to talk with the agent just to make sure that we're all aligned there. So, we work as a team. We bring this team around each client that we have. And then we also have to work within other teams. So you have to kind of balance that flexibility a little bit. Sorry, nearly choked myself there. But so that's the sort of work that we do. I absolutely love it. I love every second of it. Even when it's hard, I don't care. It's worth it. And I suppose when it comes to the the workings of actually setting up a company, what happened was with us was that I'd been working as a classical music photographer for I think maybe 10 years before I met Sophie. And some of my clients, Sophie was a mainstream designer working in studios in London. And she really wanted to work more. She wanted to found her own studio as well, but she really wanted to work in more bespoke areas, more niche. And then artists that I had started hiring her to do work for them, and then it just became so holistic and so natural that we did this. So basically, Sophie left her job. We went on a 3-week trip to Cuba, and we planned the entire company in that trip. So we're literally sitting on the beach. Yeah, we were sitting on the beach. We're drinking coconut water or whatever, and just planning the whole thing. And we came back with the whole idea, everything, and like, you know, and we still do that. It's terrible. We never turn off. Like, we go on holidays to talk about work, you know.
Well, but that's the thing, when you're an entrepreneur, like when you start, when you're your own boss,
yeah,
because and that's why I know, because it's the same, it's hard to like create some sort of boundaries, but at the same time, you don't want to have too many boundaries, because your work is your passion, and it's so related to your everyday life and how you live your life and how you find inspiration, that it's still, of course, on some level, it has to be on all the time, because your life informs your passion, informs your work.
Exactly. And I think as well, it's not just a company, it's a creative company. So you don't have any control over when these ideas come to your head. Right. So like, there's times when I'll be like, just getting into bed at midnight, and then I'm like, and then I need to scribble it all down, and I'm like, oh my God. And then Sophie's like, shut up. You know, it's like, we have a shoot in the morning, shut up. So, you know, like, it's that sort of thing. But I think that the biggest metaphor, like, is that when you're running a business, especially with your partner, it's your baby. It feels like a baby, you know, like you nurture it every day. You tell everybody about your baby on social media. You know, you just hope your baby does well and that it thrives. And then, you know, you just never stop thinking about it. You never, ever stop thinking about it. So you do have to get to a point where you sort of get this metaphorical axe, and you have to carve out your free time. And, you know, but then of course, that's when I find all the creativity starts. The second you stop, you're like, okay, now I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to go for a lovely walk, and then I'll get the best idea that I've been working on trying to get all day. So
exactly, but you need to build in that time to disconnect, to like be able, you know, to breathe, so that these ideas come to you. You know, inspiration is not necessarily going to come if you're completely stressed out and burned out. And well,
I think what's really important, especially when it's the two of you running it, because you have to keep each other in check with this, is that we have such a strong structure in our day, and it starts like with the really small structures, and then you really start seeing it. So if you really structure it one week really well, you'll really see it down the line, and then you have a you know, a really well structured whole month, and you really, do you know what I mean? If you let it go a little bit, you can see it, the little cracks coming in. So it's important. So like, I will always try and start my day with a run on my own, just to have a meeting with myself, and it's
coffee.
And a coffee. Yeah. So like, I will always try and do that, just to sort of think, okay, what is happening today, to give myself, and like, don't get me wrong, I cannot run for long. So this is a 15 minutes, like meeting with myself.
That's all you need. Exactly. It's like a meditation.
Just around the park.
Exactly. You know, what people don't realize is that some people get scared by the word meditation, but meditation, really what it is a meeting with yourself.
It's a walk, it's a run, it's sitting on a bench, whatever you have to do.
Any shape. For some people, prayer is meditation. For some people, meditation is, you know, sitting down and sitting with their thoughts. For some people, it's reading. For some people, it's running. It's a meeting with yourself. And that's, as an artist, as a creative, you have to build that time in.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that can actually be even more important than the work itself, because you have to keep yourself constantly in a positive mindset. I have a huge advantage in that an awful lot of my cousins and extended family own their own business. So we're constantly talking about different, and it's all in different areas. You know, it's all like completely different worlds. None of them are in classical music. I have some cousins who are phenomenal harpists. But as when it comes to actually running a company, we have we've a lovely support network, so we talk about stuff all the time, and there's so much crossover. But it's great because I've always said that classical music, it is a bit of a bubble, you know, and you have to get very hardcore about the business aspect of it sometimes. So I really, I'm constantly reading general business
Yes.
books, a lot of self-motivation
So
stuff.
important.
I'm obsessed. I bore everybody with this, but you know, it's so important, you know. And I absolutely love that, you know.
Well,
but I
but
think
that also comes with what we were saying of, you know, communication with other industries, and
yes,
to
absolutely.
not enhance this bubble, which every industry has a version of a bubble, but to make this bubble flexible. And it starts with us to have other interests, and to communication with other industries, and to read the newspaper every day, you know, and learn about business, because if the artists within the bubble are more open-minded people, it's going to make the industry and the opera world more open.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing to know, no matter what you're doing, even if you're self-employed, if you're working on your own, if you're an artist on your own, if you're a singer, violinist, whatever, you are a business. And it's the biggest bit missing from music education, I think, is that there's not enough training in business. I watched this incredible interview with Elvis Costello and Renee Fleming years ago, and he asked her, you know, who do you think the greatest voice is in the world? And she said that nobody knows the answer to that, because it could be somebody sitting in the audience right now who has never explored singing, who's never, you know, because the amount of work, you know, that has to go into getting a voice out of a body, you know, and how few people have the luxury of ever going down that road. And it's all about presenting yourself in a very, you know, you have to get your own work out there in a way that is controllable, in a way that is stable for you to actually live. You cannot keep pounding the door if you can't afford to feed yourself, you know. It has to be, it becomes too stressful for you and everybody around you. And I love what I do. I absolutely love it, but I'm very confident in saying that if I financially wasn't able to support myself doing it, I would not be doing it, because it's too much stress on yourself. So I think that's why we're very much on the business side of it, you know, and we both do so much research into business training and all that sort of thing, just to make sure that we're stable, that we're secure. And that stability allows us to be creative people, you know, to have a creative career, you know. And there's never a day where I don't, you know, wake up and sort of take it for granted, you know, like our relationship, our company, that we're able to get up and do what we love, you know. It's like, it's an amazing thing. And like, you're the same, yourself and David are the same. You do amazing work, you know, and you give exposure to all these incredible people, and like, it's so brilliant that you do that, you know, and it's just great.
Well, I love that. I love everything that you just said. It looks like Zoom is being generous with us.
Oh, really?
We're still getting close to an hour, so then we're gonna hit the Instagram problem. So, so to wrap up, I wanted you to share your little backstage story that you shared on Tuesday at the Royal Opera House, because I asked Fran, I asked you, you know, that you're, as a photographer and as an opera lover, you love the behind the scenes and the backstage. So I asked you if you had a personal story you could share with us, and you shared this very funny anecdote. So
you're setting me up. Okay, you're setting me up to fall now. No, like, so basically I had been working with a client late in the Opera House in London, and we were backstage, and I don't know if you've been there before, but it is, and you were saying you have been in the backstage part. It's like a maze. It is so complicated. You just get lost so easily. There's these different color zones. I just can't do it. But I get lost every time I'm in the place. And anyway, we were walking around, and basically I was on my own then at this point, and I was like completely lost. I hadn't got a clue, and I started pushing this exit door. And I was like, oh my God. And I was convinced. And then I literally caught myself just as it creaked open, that I nearly walked out onto a sold out stage at 𝗖cie𝗳𝗳𝗲𝗲.
With Brent Turfel and Christina, right?
Yeah. in that scene. And I was like, okay, so, you know, and I like it just, I remember just catching it and just thinking, because like if I hadn't sort of caught it, or there's many different ways, you know, sometimes I go into my own little world.
Open the door like more.
Yeah, like a mime.
Yeah, like, okay,
yeah,
let's go outside.
exactly. And I was like in jeans, you know, with the camera, and it just would like, and you know, like I think I dreamt that night maybe 20 different scenarios of what could have happened. Like, would I have just, you know, pretended to be a pillar? Yeah, you know, would I just like, you know, stood in the wall as like some sort of modern painting that looks odd? You know, what would you do? What do you do?
What do you
and,
do?
Oh, so yeah, and it's popped up again a few times in dreams. But yeah, no, like it's just one of those things. And yeah, like it's crazy, it's silly.
But I think these stories are amazing, you know, because we all have one of those stories that, you know, it was close enough that it's funny to tell, but it
didn't absolutely destroy yourself.
Yeah, got very, very wrong.
Yeah, you know, and I've heard that before. You know, I've heard someone nearly walking out before, like, you know, it's happened a few times, you know, but there goes me being allowed to walk around on my own there again. But yeah, no, like it's an amazing place. But yeah, that's basically it. Anything else I can't say because I get shot. But yeah, that's all. If I'm making a tit of myself, that's all that matters.
So, moral of the story: if you're ever backstage at Royal Opera House, be with someone who knows the place or learn the map.
Exactly. Oh, but and good luck learning the map. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's it's an amazing place. One of my favorite places in the world. But yeah, no, absolutely. But thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Even the second time round, it's been wonderful.
For this conversation, I'm so happy. I feel like we touched on the important things and we also talked about other things. I think it was so wonderful, and I hope everyone enjoys this conversation. And we're in touch, Fran. You're awesome. I love what you do. I'm so glad the cat is back.
It was too much. It was too much. I'm so glad he's back too. You know what? You sort of they exist and they go missing, and you're like, oh, my baby, and then they come back, and then you're just like, oh, we're back to this again. Okay, yeah. Oh, like he went out last night. He went out last night after coming back in, and he's back this morning. Anyway, I'm not going to update you about my cat story because there's nothing more boring in the world than to hear about my cat's adventures. But yeah, he's got a good life here. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Follow 𝗵_photo.
Yeah.
And Martial Light Studio to stay updated with their work. Oh, and check out the series Fran is doing with Opera Wire, Opera in Times of COVID. It's a really great series of interviews, and you can find it on operawire.com. I've been really enjoying it.
So. I have loved doing that.
Yeah.
So much. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful doing that with you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Fran. Well, we're in touch. I'll see you soon.